All right. Welcome, everybody. We do have a quorum. Quorum is 8, so we're all set. There's 2 more coming. Thank you. Our first item is to review the minutes of the previous meeting, which were sent out and are on the website. Do I have a motion? Second? Thank you. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, or additions to the minutes? All right, seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, very appropriate, thank you. All right. Good morning, afternoon.
Something like that.
It's one or the other, I'm pretty sure. All right, the major item we are going to do today is have Senator Bradley explain to us his funding constraints now that we have the September revenues. And I believe he is on his way. Does anyone have anything else of importance to discuss while he gets here? Oh, dear me. All right, I don't see much either. So in that case, I'll just give a summary of where I think we're going. If we can agree on any of the plans that have been suggested, we will make a recommendation to the legislature. If we don't have one that we're ready to recommend today, which I have no idea if that's possible, if that might happen, then I think we will not meet again until we do have something to talk about. We've done a lot of brainstorming and thrown a lot of ideas out there, but if we don't have a plan that we can recommend to implement, then, it's just a bunch of us getting together to chat, and I'm not sure we need to do that. Any comments? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Well, yes, Senator.
I don't know when, is Senator Simpson coming today or?
I don't know, but it looks like it. She left her her paperwork.
So maybe we need to.
Yes.
I'm sorry, maybe we need to pause briefly because I do know that there is some hope on the Senate side that we would have something that would be agreeable and that we could look at today. And as I understand, the cost of the proposal has come down even a little more, some more work. So I hope that we'll be able to have something because, on the Senate side, we had a lot of this conversation in the last day of session on the floor, and our Senate president suggested that we might be able to bring something forward on veto day. So I think that is still a hope, but it depends on us all getting to
It depends on us all getting
kumbaya,
together.
doesn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, if no one else has another suggestion, I think we will take a 15-minute recess so that our delinquent members can show up. Thank you. All right, since we all seem to be here, uh, Senator Bradley, you were going to report on revenues and talk about your recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So, we do have, September revenues now, so September was actually a pretty good month, $37 million above expectation, which for the year was a 36.4 million above plan. So that's good. But I think when you look at the two proposals that I've put out, the amendment 2259 and 58, the 2.5% multiplier and the 2.25 and 2.5, the price tag on both of them is, significantly higher. And as I keep stressing, there's going to be an impact at some point in time of the YDC settlement process. So I keep casting about for ways to try and, get these costs down, which is, why I proposed the split multiplier. One thing that came back to us from Marty, and maybe he can address this, is GRS, the actuary, did take, Brian, your suggestions and run a scenario on it, but because it was complicated, they only did it for the 2.5% multiplier. They need to run a full analysis for the second multiplier of 2.25 and 2.5. So I've spoken with the speaker. I would have no problem, that we move forward and ask GRS to, do the same for that version. According to what Marty got back to us with, and this is maybe where you would be able to answer questions, going with Brian's suggestions of tying it to the date that you retire, decreases the terminal funding by about $14 million. So it would bring the 92.6 down to 78.6, I believe, approximately. It was, so.
That's correct, Senator Bradley, your summary. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Would it be fair to say that with the other plan, the revised multiplier, the change should be expected to be the same order of magnitude, but not as much?
This one has a couple of additional moving parts. 2259, because of the reduction in the age in service for the 5 to 10 year people. So I don't. If GRS was here, they'd be kicking me under the table saying I can't give a full answer on that with any great certainty. It obviously will be lower than the current cost because a portion of the membership is excluded from that. Those expected not to reach the service go to service retirement.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else, Senator Waters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so Marty, does these most recent calculations take into account any reduction in the size of the pool, the numbers that might be covered?
It didn't, and there's a little bit of background on that. That's sort of the standard actuarial practice for all fiscal analysis of bills, so that they all have the same baseline. So we're working off the prior fiscal year data. There is obviously a decline in the population since then of people who've left service. So that will have a reduction on the on the actual cost shown here to some extent, but it's that reduction in the cost is dependent on when is the effective date, how many people are going to be, there at the time, if something were to pass. So, but it is safe to say, and GRS would be okay with that, that, because the population is declining, over time, these numbers are based on a larger population, so it's going to be a little bit less.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, Senator Susie?
If I may, in the amendment for 2259, and not to get you in trouble with
Yeah,
GRS, Marty,
yeah.
but do you have a rough idea of what portion of the membership would fall under the 2.25? Is that the larger portion or is that the smaller portion?
Let me see if I have that with me. I might not have brought that particular document today. I don't have that with me. I can email the commission. We have that number. I think it was on some of the handouts that might have got posted prior to the beginning of the commission convening, but I'll dig that out. I should have that
Was
with
it
me.
this page, Marty?
Yeah. No, it's the color bars.
Oh,
So it
which I don't know the
was on a
word.
previous handout,
Yeah.
which unfortunately I didn't bring along.
If you could provide it, that
Yeah.
would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Senator?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is maybe as much for Senator Bradley as for Marty. I mean, I know our goal is to terminally fund, and I understand certainly, despite the good revenues, the big uncertainties that we face. But Senator Bradley, do you think there are ways in which we could terminally fund, but have the funding be spread out over a little longer time than immediately?
So that'd be a question that I'd want to, maybe this committee would want to invite Mike Kane to talk about. Obviously, House Bill 436 had that kind of scenario where over 5 budgets, $25 million was, no, I'm sorry, $50 million, 25 per year was allocated in each fiscal year for the next 10 years. So I like your ringtone. It still has the potential issue of a future legislature not being willing or able to fund whatever that commitment might be. If we were to,
Yep.
take Amendment 2259, for example, so it's $58 million, and we terminally funded half of that in this budget, 29, then there's still the exposure of what might happen to that $29 million that would be necessary to fully complete the terminal funding. And if it's not all one lump sum, again, this would be a question for the actuaries probably, but would that change the level of terminal funding too a little bit?
A little bit at least, yes.
Yeah, so. But that would be a way of spreading out the cost.
Senator Gray?
We're almost talking like Amendment 2259 or 2258 is going to be where we go. And that's not where I can go, okay? That those amendments affect 1,731 people. There's 4,966 people in Tier C. They get nothing. Nothing in this. There's 52,645 people in Group 1. They get nothing in this. Nothing. Again, the proposals that I put forward, everyone in Group 2 gets something. Does Tier B get more than anyone else? Not really. With Group 1 in the proposal that I put forward, is it a lot of money? Can I only affect the ones that are state employees? And would the municipalities have to do something to affect their people? Yeah. But the cost would come back as a negotiated item, just like salaries are when you negotiate for fringe benefits. So if I'm going to spend the money, I would, rather have a conversation if the percentages that I put forward weren't high enough, or whether they should be in different years instead of raising everyone to 2.25 at 20 years and 2.5 at 30 years, bring it down to 2.5 at 25 years or whatever. Again, it's reasonable. The cost is something that I think that we can work with. But if we raise those benefits, we are going to have to come up with the money, because we can't take them back away after they're vested people. Can't take them back. So you got to come up with the money. It's just how much pain it is if we fund it incrementally, how much pain it is to come up with the rest of the money after we decide what we can afford this time. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Anyone else? Representative Leishman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe this was discussed a meeting or two back. This review of the retirement has become much too broad, in my opinion. It was initially focused on House Bill 436, the 1,700 folks that were penalized, I believe, with the actions that took place more than a decade ago. And I think the more we get out there about different tiers, the different increases, the group 1, group 2, we're losing track of what at least the House position was on 436, which got us to a commission in the first place. I just would like to say that I think we're really putting a lot more mud into the water than we should, and we should really focus on what I thought the commission would really be focusing on, and that's a group 2, tier 2, 1,700 plus retirees or potential retirees that were penalized a decade ago. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Harlan.
sometimes the internet is helpful. In answer to Senator Susie's question, as of the end of fiscal 22, those charts were broken down in the current tiers, which is 8 to 10, 6 to 8. So there were 723 group members between 6 but less than 10 years of service, and another 420 who were in the 4 to 6 range. So if you cut that in half, you're a little bit over 900. So the folks getting the 2.25 multiplier is somewhat less than half of the total.
Okay. Mr. Real?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to respond to Senator Gray's comments. Maybe perception is reality in this case, but I would like to think that this has gone well beyond restoring a benefit for 1,700 members, and it's become more about public safety for the 1.5 million citizens in the state of New Hampshire. State troopers are down 77 troopers. The Department of Corrections has been having to use the National Guard to staff their prisons, and professional firefighters are losing firefighters at almost a rate of 2 to 1 for what we can hire and what we can retain. I'm quite frankly tired of hearing about the fact that New Hampshire is the #1 state for public safety. We're not. The men and women that work in the fire service, the police service, corrections are some of the bravest people I've ever met and had the luxury of working with. But we have a real problem here, and we're losing people in this state, and we need to find a way to keep them. And I'm sorry, Senator Gray, but a bill that has a $15 million price tag is not going to cover the 60,000 people in the entire retirement system that we want to cover. It's just not reasonable. On June 7th and 8th, Senator Bradley, you took the floor and you gave a word to your colleagues in the Senate. And I appreciate you coming here and working on this issue and trying to figure it out. We haven't been able to get there yet. But we all listened to you. And when I say we all, the firefighters, the police officers, correctional officers in this state sat there and watched that floor speech. And we were instilled with a sense of confidence that this was going to get fixed and it was going to get done. You gave your word to fix this issue. And you said we would watch revenues throughout the summer and into the early fall to see what those revenues did. Those revenues have surpassed what we needed them to be. Yet we continue to sit here and talk about the fact that we're not going to fund this in its entirety. And I would ask that this commission take a long, hard look at what the ramifications of not dealing with this issue now will be. And I fear that it's going to result in tragedy for the citizens of this state, and I don't think any of us want to have to answer to that. I would ask that we please look at what revenues have done, stay true to what we said that we were going to do, and fix this issue once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
So, I appreciate the, comments of Brian's. I think we have looked at revenues. July and August were, slightly below expectations, the plan in the combination of the 2 months. September was good, no question about that. But as I said, you know, when a budget is put together, you have expected revenues and then appropriations based on those revenues. So we are that $36 million ahead, but we're not running the same kind of surpluses that we did in the prior budget, which is when I said on the floor that we had to look at, you know, those revenues, that was what I was referring to. If we continued to generate those kind of surpluses, this becomes easier. But so far, 2 of the 3 months barely made expectations, and the third was good. So it is a small snapshot. We are the $36 million ahead of expectations. That's good. But the price tag, we didn't know then what the price tag was going to be. And that was part of the problem. We didn't have time to have an actuarial analysis done of just doing the multiplier. We ran out of time, and it had been my hope that we would continue to generate the same kind of surpluses. So I don't think we have generated the same kind of surpluses, because virtually every month in the prior fiscal year, we were running pretty hefty surpluses. Now, some months are bigger than others. Like May is not a very big month because not much revenue is due. September is a big month, so that's good. That's good. And October's a fairly substantial month too. November is not. December is. We will have a much better snapshot having seen what October and yes, November and December look like in terms of, because you know, if we were 50 or 60 million dollars ahead right now, I'd feel a lot more confident that we were going to continue to generate the kind of surpluses. But things, you know, have a way of changing, and the uncertainty of revenue is something that I think is building more than I would have expected when I said that in June. So that's the unfortunate reality of the situation in terms of revenue. But again, I guess I would challenge all of us, and I've made a couple of suggestions, obviously, with my 2 amendments to try to find ways to move forward, but, you know, keep the cost down. And I appreciate that that's what you're trying to do. And, if we analyze the impact on the Second Amendment and, you know, so I think if this committee were to authorize that, then myself and the speaker could move ahead, because we can authorize the expenditure of the funds for GRS to do that. And it's probably, I mean, my guess is it's gonna be somewhat less than the $14 million. But that would be helpful. And if there are other ways that we can get the price tag down, but still accomplish the goal, I think, given that the revenue picture, at least for the first 3 months snapshot, has changed somewhat from the very flush days of, you know, the last budget, where there were a couple of months that we ran $100 million surpluses. I don't have all of those, numbers here in front of me, but I mean, that's why we were able to do a lot of the
Okay.
things that we did in the budget.
So the position we're in is that we have an amendment with a suggested modification that will reduce the expense by some amount. Does anyone have any other suggestions that would lower the cost while maintaining the intent of that amendment? Mr. Rill?
I don't necessarily have a recommendation, but if I could speak to what's being discussed, I'd like to.
Briefly, please do.
Okay. I have some concerns over the Second Amendment. I just want to state that now before we spend the money to have GRS do their analysis of this, and in all transparency, I'm trying to be fiscally responsible myself here. But I do believe that there is a line of demarcation somewhere that we have to identify, to which we cannot fall below when we're talking about what the benefit is that we're looking to provide. I can tell you firefighters in the state probably will not be happy with the Second Amendment that we're discussing right now, 2258, excuse me, 59, I believe it is. So I would want to state on record that I would support, obviously, 2258 and continue to look for revenue for the next month or two to see if we're able to fund that cost. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very valuable information, that the other amendment might not be totally acceptable. Representative Wilhelm, you had a comment? No? Okay. Senator Gray.
Madam Chair, I'd like to at least comment on some of the concerns that people expressed over my remarks. The duties of this commission are not based on the House bill. They are based on the language that was put into House Bill 2, which is Chapter 79, page 18 and 19, and talk nothing about the original House bill that was issued. And the first one on line 28 and 29 says we're supposed to be studying the impact of the retirement system will have on the retention of employees and the ability to attract new employees. And that's what I talked about before, is attracting those new employees. If I only concentrate on tier B and not on tier C, then how am I affecting the new employees? How am I going to provide a safe condition for the citizens of New Hampshire in the future? What we've done in part of this, in changing the retirement age back, is we've made it easier for those long-term employees to retire at a higher rate. We have negatively impacted the safety of New Hampshire citizens by doing that. So I'm very confused. You know, this commission is more like a negotiation session with the group 2 people than it is looking at the whole retirement system which is what House Bill 2 says we're supposed to be doing. Thank you, Madam
Senator
Chair.
Waters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate my colleague Senator Gray's concern about the big picture. And I certainly have not felt that the focus on the one issue that, might develop a consensus bill and look at some terminal funding is not meant to preclude whatsoever recommendations that might come out of this commission for legislation to address some of these larger issues. Because I agree completely with Senator Gray that we have to really think about, and what we've heard about, recruitment and retention, that there's a lot of issues here, and we can't wait to the next decennial pension commission. So I would hope that, as we have, if we can reach some kind of consensus at some point in time over the immediate issue, then the amendments that we've been discussing and the actuarial work that we have done, that then we really will be, I would hope, able to look more seriously at some of the things that Senator Gray and others want to propose about these other issues. Because I agree, the language there says that we are, we should look at a broad range of issues. So I would hate to think that, that we're really kind of foreclosing or precluding that larger discussion, because we've already had some too. We developed some good ideas that we brought forward, and at some point we might make some other recommendations as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'd like to say that from the beginning, I've seen the committee's work as having a short-term issue of something that was started this past year relative to the GAP group of Group 2. And also, as Senator Gray pointed out, we also need to look at the overall retirement system and see if it needs changes. And we've done a bit of brainstorming on that. We haven't had very much in the way of significant proposals to endorse, but there have been, Senator Gray's made a couple. So at the moment, the question is, should we continue brainstorming? Should we ask for a actuarial analysis and pay for it on a proposal that may or may not be satisfactory to everybody? Or should we not? I mean, I'd like to ask the commission to vote on whether or not we should ask for a actuarial analysis of the tiered increase for Group 2 with the alterations recommended by Mr. Rill.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? Does everybody understand the idea, the question? No. Okay, I see that. That would be Senator Bradley's amendment 2258, I believe. 59, sorry, 2259, which has the multiplier change, and we've already costed that as is, plus the change recommended by Mr. Rill for people that leave prior to their full date of service or full age.
I'll
Is that
second that amendment. I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Does that characterize it properly? Please.
I will support this just based on the fact that more information is obviously better than less. Again, with the assumption that very likely I wouldn't be able to support this moving forward, anything less than 2258S. And thank you.
Okay. All right, does everybody understand the question again? Mr. Ford?
How much does an analysis like that cost?
Less than 10,000, I believe. And it will be covered by the legislator.
I think Marty said the two analysis that we've done so far, the total was $7,500.
I'm not sure if they billed us for it yet. That was the range they gave us.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Less than 10, more than one. Well, if it's, this one will be more complicated than some because they've got to estimate how many people will retire at different ages, because it makes a difference. Okay. So, the motion is to request the analysis. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I don't see any opposed, but there's a couple of abstentions. So, Mr. Carlin, please go ahead and request that analysis. Senator Gray.
I'd like to talk about having another analysis done, and that is on my proposal at the bringing it to 2.25 at 20 years and 2.5 at 30 years is what it would cost to bring it to 2.5 at 20 years. And get that analysis done, which would significantly raise the $12 million, which was alluded to in one of the other statements.
Excuse me, Senator, could you say raise from what to 2.5?
In the proposals on sheet 2, at the top of the page, it says to increase the multiplier by 2.5 for the group 2 members at 20 years, and then increase it again by 2.25 to get to 2.5, or 0.25 to get to 2.5 at 30 years. And
From
so-
the multipliers that are currently in statute.
Right.
Okay, so you're,
So that would be that all the employees would be at 2.25 for every year of service, starting at 20 years would be the thing that you'd be analyzing. And again, that would not be retroactive because this proposal here wasn't retroactive.
you can't do
And
retroactive.
it would give you a much higher number if that's, what is being sought by some for the retirement. But it would affect tier B and tier C in group 2 employees.
Okay, so to recap, you're saying that every group 2 person in either group, in either tier B or C, who lasted to 20 years would have their multiplier increased to 2.25 at 20 years.
Or the effective date of the change, right? It would, for those people in tier B right now, again, not retroactive,
Well, they're all in,
they would be at 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, and
Yeah.
2, 4.
yes,
So they would, at 20 years, they would all, which they would all be in right now, they would all go to 2.5 for the remainder of their service.
so 2.5 after how many years?
20, but again,
Uh,
I'm not trying to make it retroactive. So any employee who is not at 20 years would go to 2.5 at their 20-year anniversary. Everyone else, as of the passage of the bill, would go to 2.5 for the remainder of their service. Or if someone else wants to have it analyzed differently,
Senator, I'm sure you understand what you're asking for, but I'm afraid it doesn't make sense to me. Senator Bradley, you
So-
got it?
This is a
Maybe
question of Marty. I believe that you've already run much of this, or GRS has already run much of this analysis because they've done it at 20 years and at 30 years. So this would be relatively simple to have GRS do. Would that not be the case?
Probably. So I think if may I repeat sort of what I'm hearing back and make sure that,
Please.
so one, I know you were talking about, as of the effective date, Senator Gray, but it might be cleaner to, if you say, the accruals for years of service are, between 2.0 and 2.5 for everybody in group 2 right now. well, whatever they are in the statute, for their first 20 years of service. And then at year 20 and every year work thereafter, they're accruing a 2.5% premium for those years. So it, you know, so the longer you work, the multiplier is larger after 20 years. Is that generally what you, yeah?
And the only difference would be whether or not it was retroactive to someone who, at passage of the bill, had 23 years of service and was at a probably 2.4, I think, is with those numbers where they would be now. But whether or not we boost them the extra or not, I'm willing to go either way because it's all good data.
Yeah, there's like the first year and a half of the people in the transition table, then that 8 to 10 group would have hit their 20 years in 2022, or this year is when they would have started hitting that. So they just became eligible with the 46 and 21 to retire in February. So, you know, there's, you know, I'm sure there's been some retirements in that cohort, but it's fairly early in the process for people being eligible.
Okay, that's. And this proposal affects everyone who is currently working Correct.
And future hires as well.
and
if-
future
yeah.
hires, okay.
Yeah.
It is not just for the Group B. Senator Bradley, you had a
So
comment?
I know that there's a lot of angst about this proposal from some folks and, but just as you supported the analysis of 2259, I think it would be appropriate to support the analysis of Senator Gray's, just because more information, even though it costs money to get the information, is probably better than no information. So
Yeah.
I would speak in favor of Senator Gray's proposal at the 2.5% at 20 years.
Okay. I'd like to mention that this would, even if we intended to terminally fund the change, that it would involve a follow-on increase for all the employers. Once you've got people that are in longer service employees who would be earning a higher pension. Yes, Representative Leishman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. With the last proposal we voted on, we actually saw an amendment and with language to support the proposal. Do we have an amendment that would support this proposal?
I don't
If-
believe
if-
so.
If you want to take a recess so that we can draft it, I'd be happy to do that. Again, you know, I'm fighting for that 65.1% that the proposal that's being evaluated doesn't affect. Those are the ones I've been fighting for, to give them something to help the retention. And certainly if you want to take a recess or you want to delay this until the next meeting, that can be done. But the only thing you're hurting is that 65% of the people that the current proposal doesn't affect.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Right. Mr. Crowley.
Just, you know, notwithstanding whether a formal amendment was drafted, I know certainly the retirement system and the actuary would prefer the will of the committee in sort of a written email to, you know, so we have something to refer to. We talked about it, but just having it documented even in a couple of sentences would probably be best for all of us.
Yes, I agree with you. However, I think that if you think you understand it and Senator Gray thinks he understands it, we'll let my confusion go away. And the question is, do we think it's worthwhile asking for an analysis of this, which would be an improved benefit for all the group 2 people in the system? And would it be acceptable? Senator Gray?
The written language and taking what's on top of the page 2 would be,
Excuse me, Senator, please don't say, yeah, great. If you'd put it in, email it to me with the exact words you want, I'll be, and to the retirement system.
well, if the members have this, It would be very easy for them to follow along with what I'm going to say, and I can email it to you in addition to that.
Please do.
So the words would be increase the multiplier to 2.5% for all Group 2 members for every year exceeding 20 years worked.
Thank you.
Close.
Thank you. All right. So this vote, yes, Senator Waters.
If I could ask a question, Marty, given what Senator Gray has been proposing in this actuarial study that you will undertake, is there a way of, in that study, to separate out just those folks in the tier C? So what I'm trying to get at is if we did what we have been moving towards with the other, the other amendment, but then we would have a separate number which would give us, let's say we did that, but then, Senator Gray said, well, what about these other folks? Would we have a number that would be just that Group C then, who would then get this change?
I can inquire about that and, let the commission know what the answer is. I initially think that is possible. Honestly, because the multiplier for the tier C folks is 2.0%, and it's an open-ended, group rolling forward, it's also the majority now. Most of the cost of this proposal will probably fall on that tier because, you're going from 2.4 to 2.5 for somebody, but I can ask for a breakdown amidst the tiers there.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So those who think we ought to ask for this analysis, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed. Okay, thank you. All right, so Senator Gray will send to me and to Marty Carlin the wording he wants to prefer, and Mr. Carlin will get an analysis.
Yes.
And do you think 2 weeks would be long enough to have it back? And
I think they got the first two done in about 2 weeks. And
The microphone.
As soon as we alert them of this is. I said, I think it took 2 weeks for the initial analysis of 22, 58 and 59. So I'm assuming it's going to be a similar ballpark. I'm not sure what their other workload is for us or other clients at this time of year, but I can get the meter running on this afternoon after the meeting to let them know this is coming and, give them the details on the first one.
okay. Well, since it sounds like it might take longer than 2 weeks and we want to get more numbers, let's plan not to meet next week. And the 26th will probably not be a good day. No, okay, thank you. All right, so November 2nd, do you think you will have October data by that time, or
Yeah, we won't have the final numbers, but we'll
close enough?
pretty close, yeah.
Okay, so in that case, I would suggest our next meeting be November 2nd. And at that meeting, we will have an update on revenues. We will have the cost analysis of Senator Gray's proposal and of the revised short-term proposal from Senator Bradley with Mr. Rill's changes. And is there anything else that we should discuss now or prepare to discuss at the next meeting? Okay, and Mr. Fuller.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to bring it up, but just the last time we met, I brought some thoughts forward. So I'm not sure if the members wanted any more discussion on those items, or so I know some of them too were also some items for some future actuarial stuff or items being asked for, or just plain requests being made either for the short term or the long term. So whether we want, I'm not sure if it was appropriate to bring that up for now or
Well,
future.
it's, if we are ever, if we're ever going to discuss it seriously, I mean, we got them and we brainstormed a little. Which one or ones in particular do you think we ought to take action on?
All right. So if it's okay, I'll just briefly touch upon. So for instance, proposal number one with like reestablishing a COLA account, that wouldn't be something that I'd be proposing that we obviously do anytime. That would be more of an assessment of the cost of things. So I'm not really sure. I know bringing up COLAs, but so again, that's more in the assessment category. Anyways, proposal number two, which was the support staff inclusion, and that was the,
That was extending the pension system to part-timers.
yes.
I think there's a whole lot more issues involved with granting benefits to part-timers. And I don't know if we have the skills or the knowledge to deal with that without a lot of research. So I'd be opposed to taking it up.
And proposal
Excuse me, Ms.
number,
Stacy, you have,
oh,
Thank
Sorry.
you, Madam Chair. I'd like to comment on that because my group did speak on that and we are absolutely opposed to that. Basically, you know, obviously everybody has a lot of open positions, but one of the things at the counties is we have a lot of part-time positions that are filled by people who have retired from the county and they come back. They are the ones that cost us actually the least amount to have. And, you know, basically, I've spoken with the HR people as well as many departments, and they said they don't see this as a recruitment or retention. It's not a tool. So, I mean, if that's one of the things that we're looking at is trying to retain and recruit people, this isn't one of them, because people who work in part-time aren't looking for a career at the county.
yes.
So,
It appears that the schools have set up a career path for part-time employees. And I think that's both very specific to the schools, and it involves us in a whole lot of other questions with labor law that I'm not sure I would extend a defined benefit pension as the first benefit for a part-time person. So
Madam Chair?
Very
Uh,
good.
Madam- I have to
Ms.
be
Martins?
recognized. I would welcome that discussion because I think the overall mission of this group, this commission, involves a lot more than we did. And we did start a good discussion back then. And I do appreciate the comment from the municipal area. I know that it is always enticing to have positions that are full-time, cut them up in 2 part-times and then pay no benefits. It's a way to double dip into the system where you get to work, but you're not paying the benefits, you know. But the cost gets passed on to everybody else to pay. That's what happens to the cost, that it just gets pushed back and somebody else gets to pay. So it's never a free thing. It's a free loading thing, but it's never a free thing. Somebody pays for it. Every time you get a position that is a retirement position and you have somebody come back and work because I'm already retired, what do? When in fact, the right thing to do is this. When you work these positions, they're retirement positions, you should pay. So you work, you pay. It doesn't matter if it's 1 hour, 20 hours, or 40 hours. If you're already retired, you're not going to retire again. But we already have a system for that, and it's called this. When somebody works at the retirement system and doesn't retire and leave, what happens to the money? It doesn't evaporate. It stays in the system. So we already have a system to that. But it's important that the employer should be paying to the retirement system so we don't get to push back the paying back, because this is really the bleeding that happens in the system. It's not just one way, there's 2 ways. So that's important. Another thing I'd like to say is this. There should be a way that when you are already vested, retired, so you vest in the retirement system, but you left for whatever reason, and you already vested, you have money in the system. If you come back to a position, it should be a way that the employee should be able to contribute back again per hour, 1 hour, 20 or 40, whatever hours you work. We already have a system for that. So all these things are win-win. We have systems already in place. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have a system to that. And I do understand that every time you talk to our employer about making that contribution to the retirement system, you know, the position is, well, it's free, it's cheaper and all that. But nothing, there are some savings that we cannot afford. This is a savings that's very expensive for many people, for taxpayers, for the retirement system, and for the unfunded liability. Not only that, it's wrong, and we should change that to correct that.
Yeah,
And I
I'd
will-
like to
thank you.
mention that we had a bill this past year that would penalize employers that canceled a retirement system job and replaced it with a part-time job. We couldn't work out the details, but I believe the intent of it is coming back. So I think that would be an appropriate way to say, how do we deal with the situation of employers or employees, for that matter, trying to game the system in this regard? Because it's going to require a law change to do it.
I appreciate that, and I'm welcome to have that discussion, because the real gaming that happens is when you terminate a full-time position, you can break it up in 2 part-time positions, and then you say you're going to pay no benefits, not just the retirement benefits, but no other benefits at all whatsoever. That is wrong for our economy, and we should not be doing that. So I appreciate that. And as well as finding a way that somebody who's already deferred, vested, and left for whatever reason, you come back, you should be paying to the retirement system. I would like to do that. If I was a person paying, I would have no problem paying. As well, I have 36 years in. If I retire and come back, I should be paying to the retirement system. And if somebody says, but you're already retired, well, no difference than somebody else who worked 3 years and left, have the money there. The money's there, it doesn't evaporate. And you have already a system to that. I think it would be a fair thing to do, and we should look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fuller?
And I appreciate the comments on that too. So, and I appreciate what you're saying as well, as they would get a little bit complicated. Just one quick comment on that, because I actually want to talk more about the vesting one right here next. But I want to make clear, because I know there was some prior comments in our other meeting, people would be concerned about people wanting to just, you know, all of a sudden get all their benefits in the last year. It would be a percentage base. So for instance, if you're only working like say 20 hours, the proposal would be that you would only get like half the benefit. So, I mean, there's nothing here in terms of wanting to allow the door to open so that people could get full-time benefits with only working part-time. So that's not the intent. And if I wasn't clear, just wanted to clarify
Okay.
that real quick. So, but actually I wanted to really mention here, I wanted to briefly go over all of them, but just with the vesting one right here, which was number 3, establish 5 years of credible service would be considered to be vesting. And again, that would match us up with our neighbors, because especially with the amount of years we need vesting right now, establishing only a 5-year mark of being vested, I think that would be a really great tool to attract and retain our workers. So,
Okay. Ms.
So
Stacy?
Dan, I would just want to comment that we support that. We do. We see that as a very good retention recruitment tool, is reducing it down, because what we're seeing at the counties is a lot of younger people who the 10-year mark, they just don't see as attainable. 5 years probably is more palatable, so we would be in favor of that.
Okay. Senator Waters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that last one of the vesting and the 5 or the 10, you know, after our discussion last time, and it did seem to me that the word we were hearing that it really potentially would not have a financial impact. And so my question kind of to my Senate colleagues, because we're still in a filing period, is if either now or maybe in February with late filing, if this is something that this commission reaches a consensus on, maybe we could put something in February or even by 4 o'clock today. But I think we need to know that idea. I hope we don't lose it. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it would be possible to act on it this year. If the commission has consensus, I think we could find a vehicle to do it.
Okay, yeah, the impact on that would be that someone who left between 5 and 10 years would be eligible at a future date to receive a pension. And So I don't think it would have a very large effect, but there would be some. Mr. Carlin, could you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so essentially, since pensions are currently calculated, years of service is an important factor in that equation. Somebody with 5 or 6 years who left, and then they'd have to wait until they reach whatever the statutory eligibility age or other requirements are in there. They'd get a pension on that, the percentage of their average final salary would be much smaller than somebody who worked a full career. Another thing the Director Goodwin just mentioned too is with employee refunds, and I talked about that a couple weeks ago, where people, if they terminate before vesting or even after, they can get their money back plus the interest. It may reduce the amount of people seeking refunds, because they'll just kind of let it ride for a small stream of income in retirement.
Making the calculations much more complicated. All right. Senator Bradley?
Question, thank you, Madam Chair. Has the actuary actually looked at this? Has there ever been a bill that's been analyzed?
No, we've never had this as legislation. I mean, I can put the question to them when we're sending over these other analyses, is just, without doing a full analysis, there is any way to give an order of magnitude impact on something like that. They may say, no, we need to look at it in more detail, but we can ask that preliminary question if a proposal was put in as a bill, they do the full analysis for sure.
It would be an extremely simple bill. You just have to change 10 to 5 in, I think, 2 places.
Yeah.
But it should be actually considered as a bill separate from everything else, because that would be a retention tool that might or might not be worth the cost when we don't know what the cost is.
Yeah.
Mr. Rill, you had a comment?
I was just going to ask Madam Chair if it would be appropriate for this commission to make a motion on that, but you may have just answered my question.
Yes, please. If you wish to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that this commission draft language that would establish a vesting period of 5 years for the retirement system.
I'll second it.
Okay. Seconded. Ms. Stacy got in before you. All right, so the intent of this is that we would change the statute to establish 5-year vesting for all people in the retirement system and put it in as a bill for next year, which will then receive the full actuarial analysis. Senator Bradley?
Could I ask you, Brian, to amend your motion and ask Senator Waters, instead of making a recommendation that the committee recommends that we do this, recommend that Senator Waters file that as a bill, and he has 2 hours and 13 minutes to do it.
Would my colleague, Senator Susie, like to do that?
Okay. So I
And
can
the
run
reason
that.
for that is then,
21 bills, Jeff.
this discussion then would not be like, do we support 5 years? Do we not support 5 years? Not be in a vacuum. I think that Kathy makes a good point. I don't know, Dave, if you have any thoughts from the municipal association. I'd like to know what the cost is, if it's a nominal cost. I would agree with the employers in the room that, as well as the employees, is probably a good idea. But that way, if the motion was Senator Waters file the bill or Senator Susie file the bill, then that whole analysis and the public hearing happens. So I'd be more comfortable with that.
I'm happy to amend my motion to have Senator
Then I
Susie
would
file
second
that.
that,
Okay.
as long as it's Senator Susie or Waters that files the
Susie.
bill.
I see your,
Democrats, is what you're trying to say, right?
No, Waters, it's because you were bragging, or was it Senator Susie bragging, you only have 4 bills?
as long as he basically means somebody other than Senator Bradley.
Yes.
Okay, everyone understand the motion?
And then the maker of the second on the motion will have to agree
The
to that.
motion was made by
Yeah.
was amended by,
Yes.
made and amended by Mr. Rill,
Yeah.
seconded by Ms. Stacy, both times. Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Senator, you've got your marching orders. Okay. Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Okay, then I'll be quick. I don't want to hold anybody up. And this, the last two things I brought up on previous were about the definition of earnable compensation and then also the potential change in AFC calculations. So I just didn't know if anyone else had any other thoughts on those items or.
I'd like to mention that when we made what we thought were incredibly trivial changes to that in House Bill 436, it ended up being better than $60 million. Mr. Carlin?
Yeah, actually with House Bill 436 and also House Bill 579 last year, which would have restored the 3-year average final compensation with the other pay types included in it for Group 2, we as a retirement system on our dime did ask the actuary what the cost would be analogous just for Tier B in Group 1, because just sort of trying to anticipate future impact. So that's actually on the last page of the grid. There's a couple of Group 1 projections, and this is the approximately 11,000 members in Group 1 Tier B. If you brought them back to a 3-year AFC with retirement incentive payouts, leave payouts, things like that, that's about 187 million on the UAAL plus an employer contribution increase. It's nominal. So
Yes.
so we did it similar. That's not split out. That's not one or the other, and you couldn't really cut it in half, but it gives you an order of magnitude idea of what that would entail.
Ms. Stacy?
So I will just, Madam Chair, just say that we are in opposition to both those changes. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have something we should discuss? Okay. So we will get our actuarial analysis. We will have a bill in the Senate on 5-year vesting, and we will meet again on November 2nd. Same time, same place. Thank you all.